right, back in the saddle again. What is going on, New York Giant fans? Welcome back to another preview pod. I think we only got, four or five more of these? Saints, Falcons, Ravens, Colts, Eagles. So a lot of birds in there. But nonetheless, we got five more preview pods to go, including this one. So we are in the month of December, the second to last month of football, of course. It ends in January against the Eagles. So the New York Giants host the New Orleans Saints this weekend. They will no longer have any games that are flexed or any games that, they're going to play on Thursday Night Football or they're going to be in the lights of the nation. The rest, it is 1 o'clock p.m., to my knowledge, the rest of the way through. Unless, for some reason, the Eagles are playing for something in week 18, like the division is on the line or something, and they have to compete, and that's like an important game, 425. So that's like the only shot, but at that point, the Giants, as they have been for pretty much the entire season, are relevant. And there's not much of a focus on the New York Giants for the next 5 weeks, other than the fact, New York sports radio, right? You won't get any national headlines. Oh, the Giants did this, the Giants did that, whatever. In terms of the national media, like the ESPN First Takes and whatnot, and, Rex Ryan holding Joe Shane accountable. You're not going to really get that. I mean, you might, but New York sports radio will be the only ones talking about the New York Giants as, again, they've been irrelevant for most of the season. They won't be relevant for these next 5 games. But as I stated beforehand, in the Cowboy game, this is going to be a tough few games objectively for the New York Football Giants. They're going to have to win some games. I mean, to go on a 12-game losing streak to end your season, which you anticipated to be a winning one, right? They drafted Malik Neighbors. They traded for Brian Burns. That's not, a season where you say, oh, no, we're going to throw in the trash can. Well, 12 losses in a row does a lot. As we talked about on the last show, we talked about it on the YouTube video. It does a lot. And you're facing a team in the New Orleans Saints who has the tiniest shot, but they still have a shot in the division because they currently are 2-1 in these last 3 games. They sit at 4-8 right now, which is, again, not a great shot at their division. But when you look, Falcons are 6-6. The Bucks are 6-6 as well. So they're really 2 games out. And, of course, need a couple of things to happen. And it would help if the Giants beat the Falcons. It would help the Saints in that way. But, obviously, we're not really... Why would you want to play spoiler for another division? That really doesn't make any sense. They would just want to win based off good feeling. So that's that. Now, the Giants are coming down with a couple of different injuries. We'll talk about that in the injury report. I do want to get into maybe a little bit about the QB talk. I mean, not necessarily in terms of Daniel Jones or any of that stuff, but the weird optics that the Giants are putting out. But this probably, outside of maybe the Colts game, it says the most winnable if you're Brian Dable and you're looking down at the schedule. Now, of course, any given Sunday attitude is the attitude you have to instill in yourself as a head coach. But this is one of the more winnable games. This is probably the worst team you're facing coming up because the Ravens are good, the Falcons are top of the division, the Eagles are at top of the division, and as far as the Indianapolis Colts, though, they're 6-7. So this is the worst team you'll face. But the New Orleans Saints do face the Giants at the right time. Let's go into the injury report, and I'll leave that cliffhanger till we get to things to look for. We will have Nick Besson on in the second half. He is a Saints writer. He's going to give us the Saints perspective. But I'll start with the away team in the New Orleans Saints. So a couple of different injuries. Nick Salvaderi, he has a knee injury. He will not be playing. Taysom Hill, obviously, he's done for the season. Tano Passignon has an Achilles injury. He is questionable. He played during practice all week, and a good sign for Kendry Miller. He is questionable, but he practiced all week, hamstring injury. Everyone else is fine. Pete Werner, Tyrann Mathieu, Lucas Patrick, Foster Moreau. Also, Bub Means, their wide receiver, is out with an ankle injury, so they're not going to have him. Eric McCoy's in. Juwan Johnson's in. Cesar Ruiz, full practice on Friday. He had a concussion from the last game. Now, as far as the Giants, it doesn't look as bright. Deonte Banks is out with a rib injury. Ricky Munoz-Roches is out with a neck and shoulder injury, and Bobby Okereke is out with a back injury. Now, those last two, those are telling in terms of what this game could feature. I'm going to leave that as another crumb for the foreshadowing. Now you go to questionable. Actually, I'm going to go to doubtful first. DJ Davidson with a shoulder injury. Add that to the list of D linemen that are out. And what I just said about the, telling tone of this game. And Jermaine Lemonor is doubtful with a quad injury. Questionable here. Evan Neal with a hip injury. Deontay Johnson, he is questionable with an ankle injury. I really would like to see him play. There's not a lot of players that we don't know who they are yet or all these other different things. We know pretty much, for the most part, who these players are. I would love to see Deontay Johnson because he didn't really get much last year, if at all. In the preseason, he was pretty good. He seemed like a fit for Bowen's scheme. And with the shortage at linebacker, with Micah McFadden and Musau and Isaiah Simmons playing the main snaps, you probably want to figure, hey, with the way the Saints team is going, you'd probably like to go a little bit more with the Deontay Johnson. Malik Neighbors, hip flexor. It's going to be interesting to see if he plays. I don't think he does. Evan Neal, he is questionable with the hip injury. Drew Phillips, questionable with the shoulder injury. And Jordan Riley, questionable with a knee injury. So let's go to team rankings. The Saints rank 12th in total yards on offense, 19th in passing offense, 10th in rushing, 14th in points per game. Defensively, they're not very good, though. 30th in total yards per game, 29th against the pass, 26th against the run, and, 19th in points per game. Now, I'm going to move to the Giants side before we get to the analytics, just because I want to compare. Total yards per game, 27th. Passing offense, 31st. Rushing offense, 15th. And 32nd in points. So the Giants are the worst offense in the NFL scoring-wise. Defensively, 19th. I can't read today. I don't know why. 19th in total yards. 6th in passing defense. 29th against rush. And 18th in points per game. Swoop back to the analytics side of the football. 22nd in pass percentage, going back to the New Orleans Saints. 11th in run percentage, 28th in pass percentage on first down, 3rd in run percentage on first down, 25th in blitz percentage, 21st in pressure percentage, and 23rd in sacks. So they are, once again, trying to face the Giants at the right time with a couple of different injuries for the New York Giants on the offensive line. 11th in blitz percentage, that's where the Giants are on defense, 14th in pressure percentage, and they were first in the NFL in sacks just a couple of weeks ago, but now they're 6th because they haven't gotten a sack since the Panthers game. And if you even go back before that, where you had Washington, you had the Panthers, you had the Bucks, you had the Cowboys, 4 games, the Giants accumulated 1 sack with a first-round pick on the D-line and Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns as well. He's been paid a lot of money, so it doesn't look great for Joe Shane right now. Now, 11th in pass percentage, 22nd in run percentage, 19th in pass percentage on first down, and 11th in run percentage on first down. So what was I talking about with things to look for and all this other different stuff? So I want to go on the quarterback tangent. This is really the second year in a row where the Giants really don't know their ass from their elbow or their ass from their head or whatever you want to call it in terms of this quarterback shit. Because last year, obviously they went with Tyrod Taylor after Daniel Jones got the neck injury. And, well, was it a neck injury or was it a concussion? Whatever. I'm going to say it was the neck injury. So, they have Tyrod Taylor. He gets hurt against the Jets, and they go with Tommy DeVito. Tommy DeVito puts on this run. I think it was around the Packers game, which was after the bye. I want to say, yeah, because you had the Pats game, then you had the bye, and you had Green Bay on Monday Night Football. So, it was during the bye week and heading into the Packers week where Brian Dable said, we're going to start with Tommy DeVito. Now, I don't know what influenced that decision. I'd like to think that, his play in terms of not turning over the football and being a semi-decent quarterback and the fact that the Giants were winning football games, you kind of want to stay with that. But also you had Tyrod Taylor, who did win you a game against Washington the first time around. So you have that and a couple other close games. So it wasn't like a much bigger difference, but we do know, obviously, in both scenarios, hey, the better quarterback is obviously Tyrod Taylor. So they elect not to go with Taylor. They sit him, right? And it's gonna tell a lot of different things here. Tommy DeVito starts against the Packers. He wins. He starts against the Saints. He loses. He doesn't look good. He was sacked a whole bunch of times. And then they play him against the Eagles on Christmas, and he pretty much falls back into the same Tommy DeVito. What happens? They bring in Tyrod, and Tyrod's bringing all this success, but the Giants do only get one win out of it during that stretch, which is against the Eagles in Week 18. So that's number one, and to get more money and possibly some playing time pending, Tyrod Taylor went over to the New York Jets, and he opted not to re-sign with the New York Giants, which again, if you looked at the optics and how it's similar, you can tell that the QB2 has been pissed off because you're riding with Tommy DeVito, who's not as good compared to Drew Lock. And not to say Drew Lock is any barn-burning quarterback or, he's this great quarterback, whatever. And Tyrod Taylor, those are still better options. So you look at this year, which I would argue is kind of worse because last year was a total failure of all sorts. But you look at this year where it was kind of right your ship and Daniel Jones, not getting injured. Him on the second year, they didn't elect to take a quarterback. All this controversy. So they sign Drew Lock. They keep Tommy DeVito. They keep those quarterbacks. Then Daniel Jones gets benched after the Panthers game, and they go to Tommy DeVito, which Lock wasn't happy about because you're paying a guy $5 million to sit on the bench. He wants to play. He's the better option. I know Tommy DeVito in camp was better, but, it only lasted a short amount of time. And it showed because against the Bucs, Tommy DeVito didn't look good. And, against the Cowboys, Drew Lock looks semi-decent. He still had a turnover, but he looks semi-decent, probably a little bit more operable in the pocket than Tommy DeVito. So now they start Drew Lock, and Tommy DeVito is benched. So, again, the optics really don't make any sense. I feel like it's a Giants team that's yearning for wins, which, to be honest with you, if you were yearning for wins, there's really no reason, better yet, to be going the cheap route and saying, okay, we're going to start Tommy DeVito because we don't want to pay the incentives to Drew Lock, or we don't want to do this, we don't want to do that. No, it doesn't make any sense. Drew Lock, outside of camp, was always the better quarterback. He just got injured against the Lions, which made him inoperable and inactive against the Texans and the Jets. So, in that case, you really can't say you had a full glimpse of Drew Lock, even though, in camp he was facing your defense. So, there's that. That's really all the quarterback shit. So, as far as defense and offense goes, defensively, I'll start with the Giants, and I'll start with the Saints on offense. Is you listen to the metrics that I gave you. You know who the running back is for the New Orleans Saints. And if you look at their roster, it's depleted at wide receiver. They have 3 active wide receivers. Bub Means is out. Olave's on IR. So you have Marquez Valdez-Scantling. You have Cedric Wilson Jr. And you have another junior. I don't know the guy's name. It escapes me now. But they're not good wide receivers. They're not. Running backs, you have Jamal Williams. You have Kendre Miller. But most importantly, you have Alvin Kamara, who's in a nice few games. He's put a nice few games together. And tight ends, you have Juwan Johnson. And I think they have 4 tight ends. So they're trying to really take the Panthers strategy, if you will. But the Panthers were less depleted. It's about talent they acquired, et cetera, et cetera. So something I'll get into later with the O-line, and the metrics show it, is this is a Saints team that blocks better against the run than they do against the pass. Now, of course, that little outlet is an outlet for the New York Giants to take advantage of and sack the quarterback. But you can't really do that because I have a feeling that the Saints are going to take advantage of the Giants' depleted personnel department. I did mention that DJ Davidson is doubtful. I did mention that Nacho is out. I did mention that Bobby Okereke is, he's not going to play. So even if you have a Deontay Johnson in there, it's still not good because Deontay Johnson, he's going to have some rough patches, probably not going to play all the snaps on defense. So you have Micah McFadden and Darius Muasau. And I'm not impressed with Muasau. I mean, I feel like the Giants, he was supposed to be drafted as a special teamer. For some reason, they're kind of like putting him in a bad position because he can't tackle really. I don't know what it is. It just seems like on the biggest tackles, he whiffs. So that's a huge hole in the linebacker core. DBs, if Drew Phillips doesn't play, which I don't know where he's at, that's another big one because the Giants really don't have any good slot corners outside of him that can really defend against the run. I mean, you got Jason Pinnock, who is a safety, is good. Belton's not great in the box. Newbin is inconsistent to say the least. And then you go to the D-line where I already mentioned Nacho is out. Jordan Riley's questionable. DJ Davidson, he's doubtful. So you look at the Giants roster and it's completely depleted at D-line. You have Elijah Chapman, who was kind of dog-walked last week, but also not his fault 100%. You have Corey Durden, who was signed off the practice squad of the Los Angeles Rams. You have Casey Rogers, who was with the Giants in the preseason. He's on the practice squad, played at Oregon and Nebraska. And you have also Elijah Garcia, who was formerly of the Broncos and the Rams before that. So he doesn't have much experience. You're going to be playing guys that don't have much experience at all. Now, maybe you want to shift Tibbs or Burns inside to help out. That's your choice. Timon Fox is also there. So the Giants can do a multitude of things, but it's really not going to end in a good result. So if I'm the New Orleans Saints and I want to pound this win, and I'm Darren Rizzi, I'm feeling at home, right? Darren Rizzi from, I forget what part of New Jersey, but he's from New Jersey, so he probably wants to get this win, hometown feeling. And he's coaching for his job right now. He's done a pretty decent job with this New Orleans Saints team. So, obviously, stack wins. They're not looking to tank or any of this stuff. Obviously, money has been an issue with them for years. But again, what you want to do is stack your wins. Now, as far as the Giants' offense goes, respectfully and objectively looking at this offense, Neighbors is questionable, so that's telling. Now, they don't have a great corner room because Marshawn Lattimore has been moved on from. You have Paulson Adebo on the IR. So you have a bit of an inexperienced secondary. And now the problem, once you break it down to the Giants side, is not only are you without Malik Neighbors, Theo Johnson is done for the season. So, however the Giants and Brian Daboll want to hide these different people, they want to hide Jalen Hyatt, they want to hide this guy, they want to hide Daniel Bellinger. It's the game to get those guys involved. Slayton, we know that obviously he's on a contract year. This would be a pretty opportune time to get him the football. So, get Slayton the football. Robinson against Alontae Taylor, who's a pretty good box guy. In coverage, he's been, statistically, he hasn't been great, but slot corners, sometimes the stats are a little bit puffy. But as far as the Giants' offense, I mean, their run defense isn't great either. And this isn't a team that gets to the passer a lot, but so running the football may actually be the scenario here. You might want to run the football just to have a time of possession thing, but it's going to be tough to control time of possession when you don't have all your D-line pieces, your linebacker pieces, and your run game is giving up fucking how many yards per carry. So, Tyrone Tracy, I think he'll be a big part. I think they should get him involved a little bit as a wide receiver. I know he's still learning that running back position, but as a wide receiver, he might help out Drew Lock a little bit. So, players to watch, let's go to that. Derek Carr this year, obviously he dealt with an injury for a few weeks, and Spencer Rattler took over, but not 1,926 yards. 14 touchdowns, 4 INTs, 7 sacks in 9 games, which, statistically isn't bad. 68.1 completion percentage, which is good. And about 214 yards per game, which isn't bad. Also, Taysom Hill is done for the season, as we mentioned, so he's not going to be a part of this offense, so they'll have to find some other element. Alvin Kamara, he is 106 yards away from another 1,000-yard season. I do expect him to break that in this game. 12 games this season, 894 yards, 6 touchdowns, 4.3 yards per carry, and 3 big plays over 20. And then you go to Jamal Williams, who really hasn't seen a lot. 124 yards on 32 carries, 3.9 yards per carry, 1 touchdown. And, of course, I think they'll try to factor in Kendre Miller if he's healthy a little bit more, the rookie last year out of TCU. As a receiver, Alvin Kamara is actually their lead receiver. So the Giants' running backs and safeties will need to be on par. I don't know if it's going to be Micah McFadden, Jason Pinnock, Dane Belton, or any of the other guys, Tyler Nubin maybe, covering Kamara because he's not bad as a route runner. 450 yards, 1 touchdown, 5 big plays over 20. Olave's not there. Shaheed is not there. So it really boggles down to Juwan Johnson, 313 yards and 2 touchdowns this season, 10.4 yards per reception. Only 8 catches, but 237 yards and 4 touchdowns for Valdez-Scantling. So he's got some big plays under him. You got Foster Moreau, who is the tight end for Derek Carr in Las Vegas and Oakland. 3 touchdowns, 223 yards, 13.1 yards per reception. And then obviously it goes down to Kevin Austin Jr., which was the name I forgot earlier. Mason Tipton, Bub Means is out, and Cedric Wilson. As far as the offensive line goes, again, this is where the Giants could kind of attack certain players a little bit. Their tackles are a little bit weaker than the interior. Now, they're all better at run blocking statistically. You look at the left tackle in Talise Fuaga, who came out of, I believe it was Oregon State, or was Oklahoma State. I want to say it was Oregon State. 6 penalties, 5 sacks allowed this season. You have the left guard in Lucas Patrick, 3 penalties, 0 sacks. You have 1 penalty, 0 sacks for Eric McCoy, who's ranked as one of the best centers in football. You have Cesar Ruiz, 1 penalty, 1 sack allowed. And you have Trevor Penning, who's been a penalty machine, 10 penalties and 3 sacks. You go to their less than productive D-line and 1 linebacker. It's a mixture of guys. It's Brian Breesy, 18 tackles, a forced fumble, 6.5 sacks, 6 TFLs, 13 quarterback pressures, and 11 quarterback hits. And surprisingly, when I looked at this player, I'm like, I'm interested to see, why has he been so not productive this year? But that's Cam Jordan, 18 tackles, 1 sack, 1 TFL, 6 quarterback pressures, and 3 quarterback hits. He's also getting older, so it could be a rotational thing. Carl Granderson, 40 tackles, 4.5 sacks, 7 TFLs, 24 quarterback pressures, 9 quarterback hits. He is the second leading sacker on the team behind Breesy, who was picked out of Clemson just a year ago. Peyton Turner, who was picked in the 2020 or 2021 draft. 15 tackles, 2 sacks, 3 TFLs, 3 quarterback hits, and 6 quarterback pressures. Chase Young, the signing, obviously he came over from San Francisco and Washington last year. 21 tackles, 3.5 sacks, 6 TFLs, 16 quarterback hits, and 20 quarterback pressures. And you move to the linebacker spot with Demario Davis, who's been there for a long time, as I can remember. On the season, he's got 1 TFL, 1 sack, 82 tackles, 2 quarterback pressures, and 4 passes defended. You also go to Pete Werner, 57 tackles, 1 pass deflection in a total of 9 games and 3 TFLs. You move to their secondary. You have Alontae Taylor, who's a chess piece on that defense, does a little bit of coverage and also in the box as well. 2 forced fumbles, 12 pass deflections. He's given up 5 touchdowns this year, so it might be a weak spot for the Giants to attack. 117.5 passer rating, 4 sacks, 7 quarterback pressures, 71 total tackles, 65.8 completion percentage allowed in coverage, and he does not have any interceptions on the year. A guy we all wanted, a guy the Giants wanted, but they missed out on him. Kool-Aid McKinstry, out of Alabama, started 4 games, has played in 10 this year, 266 yards allowed, 63.3 completion percentage, no INTs, no touchdowns allowed either. So maybe this is a game where you could kind of get him for that. 23 tackles, has been sent on 2 blitzes and a 91.8 passer rating. A guy who's been transitioning from corner and safety, former Seattle Seahawks defensive back is Hugo Amadi. On the season, he's allowed a 70.7 completion percentage in coverage. He's played in only 6 games, 2 touchdowns allowed, 104.7 passer rating to go along with 1 sack, 2 quarterback pressures, 34 total tackles. Any TFLs? Yeah, he does. He's got 4 TFLs. And then finally, the Honey Badger. The Honey Badger, yes. So obviously, he spent the last 3 years in New Orleans, first few years in Arizona, Houston, Kansas City. He's played a multitude of roles. He has no touchdowns given up this season. He's been very good in coverage, 68.9 passer rating, 2 pressures on the quarterback, 45 tackles, 3 INTs, 65.2 completion percentage. Already mentioned the passer rating. He's got a high yards per completion, but he doesn't allow that many completions, which I guess is a good thing, and 293 yards total. So that is basically the look at their defense. Now, keys to win. Number one for me is going to be stop the run. I know obviously the Giants can run the football. They could do a multitude of things to take advantage of this bad secondary, but you're not going to be able to do any of that if you don't have time and if you don't stop the run. So my thing is, look, if you're Shane Bowen and you're playing for your job, whatever, you're coaching for your job, probably want to stack the box. I know the Giants aren't great with DBs right now. They're not great on wide receivers. Derek Carr is still a good quarterback. Obviously, he hasn't played up to par, but I would experiment with stacking the box, right? Simmons there and Micah McFadden and all these other different guys. The D-line's going to need help, so stop the run. Number 2 is time of possession. If for some reason in a parallel universe, maybe it's the universe that we live in, the Giants do a good job of stopping the run without Dex and Nacho and all those guys. Maybe they do a good job, as I said. You'll want to control that time of possession in a game where you know you're not going to score too many points. So that's where Tyrone Tracy's going to come in. That's where Devin Singletary is going to come in. So you're going to really need to do that. Make the passes that you can. Complete the passes that you can. Time of possession. Control time of possession. And I would say the last one, take advantage of a bad secondary, just as a last resort. Time of possession really equates with running the football. Take advantage of a bad secondary. Why not? Kool-Aid, he's a rookie. Maybe he has some stuff on film that they're looking to manipulate. Alontae Taylor, if Malik Neighbors plays with an injury, I don't think he will, but if he does, it could be a big game for him. But as a score prediction, this is not going to be a high-scoring game. Unless Alvin Kamara does what he did on Christmas a few years ago, fucking 5-6 touchdowns against the Vikings. Let me go and say that the New Orleans Saints are going to win this game 19-9. 19-9. New Orleans Saints victory. We're going to head over to the discussion with Nick Besson, who covers the New Orleans Saints for Canal Street Chronicles. All right, so for the second half of our show, we have Kyle on here from the Canal Street Chronicles. Of course, the New Orleans Saints. They have an interim head coach. They're still fighting for the playoffs a little bit. But I do want to go back to a couple weeks ago. And the first question I'll ask you, Kyle, is what was the last straw or the last few straws that got Dennis Allen fired? And I'm pretty sure Darren Rizzi, at least from what I've seen on the outside, has done a decent job with the New Orleans Saints since Dennis Allen got fired and Rizzi took over. So what was that timeline looking like?
Yeah, so I mean, losing 7 straight in general, right? That's going to start. I mean, you've had talent on the roster for way too long, so losing 7 straight should just never happen, especially when you're paying a quarterback as much as Derek Carr is being paid. I believe it's around 35 to the 40 million per year. So, in just in any case you're paying a quarterback that much, you shouldn't be 2-7. But Cam Jordan said it best. Like, we lost to the Panthers. I don't know, and they're on the uprise, right? They're looking better now, but you lost to the Panthers, who the first few weeks of the season, that's the laughing stock of the league. Once you lose to the Panthers, you really start to look at yourself. Like they have that viral tweet from Kyle Kuzma when he was on the Wizards, and it was like, just don't be that team, and then you became that team.
Yeah, definitely. And how has Darren Rizzi done in Dennis Allen's absence? Of course, he's probably trying to vie for the regular head coaching job.
So Rizzi's actually had head coach nods from or interviews at least from other teams before. So he's a motivator. He's not he's our special teams coordinator. He's not gonna call plays, he's not doing offense, defense. But he makes some gutsy calls. He's players love him. He's a locker room guy. The minute Dennis Allen actually got fired, the locker room was full of Merry Christmas shirts. It's a crazy thing, but the players absolutely love Rizzy, and I mean the atmosphere is completely different now than what it was before.
Okay. All right. So moving to the head of the offense at the quarterback position with Derek Carr. Um, he started out really hot. The Saints obviously started out hot too. Of course, you had that long stretch of losing. Um, where is he now? Do you think he's had consistency issues? Where is he at now in terms of his play?
So uh, I get yelled at a lot because I give a lot of excuses for Derek Carr, which is true. I do, and I believe a lot of it is on him that maybe he's not always put on him. But you're without Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed. Your O line has gone through a carousel of who's in, who's out, including losing Eric McCoy, which is probably the turning point of the season. So there's the firepower just isn't there to help him, but that doesn't stop from the holding onto the ball too long. That's like the major problem, or just hitting the targets. Like he's missed some throws that he clearly should have had, but I just don't think he has the playmakers around him at wide receiver, at least right now, to help him. In terms of him, he's mid, right? You're paying him a mid quarter contract at this point. He's not getting paid at the top, even though a lot of people like to believe it. He's probably around top 12 or 14 in contract, and he's playing like maybe that 15 ish. And then you got to put a number on it, but he's kind of you're getting what you're paid for, which you could know he's not a proven winner. You're getting a quarterback who's operating an offense, and your firepower just isn't there.
Absolutely. So, um, this guy, I remember when he was with the Vikings in 21, and I really liked what he did with Kirk Cousins. And I wasn't floored, but I was actually pretty happy for Saints fans when they hired him as OC, and that was Clint Kubiak, who obviously from the Kubiak tree and all that, and also worked with Kyle Shanahan and a number of other coaches. Do you think he's going to get hired for a head coaching job this offseason? And how good has he tried to make the offense despite the fact that there's been injuries and inconsistencies?
So actually, for a lot of Saints fans, the first 2 weeks were a little worrying because they went from Pete Carmichael, who was one of the worst offensive coordinators in the league, to Clint Kubiak, who was lighting it up. I mean, the team put 40 plus points each of the first 2 weeks, and people were scared. Like, are we going to lose Clint Kubiak already just 1 year after having him? I don't think he leaves in the offseason. I mean, like I said, we lost 7 straight and the offense was stagnant in a lot of that, even with rookie quarterbacks in and out and all the injuries. I don't think they lose him right away. But I mean, he's done a perfect job. That system that he's brought over has been executed perfectly. It's just the fire, like I said, the firepower isn't there. We've been able to run the ball and create the options for play action. That's why Rashid Shaheed was going so crazy for the first few weeks because that play action deep ball to him almost worked every time. But yeah, I don't see Kubiak leaving in the offseason, and he's an awesome guy. And I'd see the Saints probably, and I don't think this is what happens, but if he goes where he's starting to get head coach look at, I think the Saints will be the ones that have first dibs at him.
Yeah, definitely. It would be a smart decision, him and Dan Rizzi competing for it. Now, this guy was picked, I believe, last year in, I want to say the mid rounds, I want to say third round. And people were saying, oh, Kamara's done. And obviously the draft pick is Kendrick Miller out of TCU. What is his status to this point? Has he been a disappointment? Has it been injuries? Has it been a multitude of things?
Yeah, so it's 100% the injuries. He has not been able to stay on the field. One of the biggest things is he recently came off of IR. The problem with him being on IR was Dennis Allen, frustrated with him constantly getting injured, prematurely put him on IR. He didn't have to go on IR. He probably would have been back a week or two later. But so with Allen being so frustrated with Kendrick Miller, and he said a lot of things before the season, like why can you justify keeping a guy on the roster if he can't stay healthy? So clearly there was frustration there, and it showed when he put him on IR early. But he's got a lot of talent, and a lot of it reminds me of Kamara. Actually, coming out, I scouted him a lot, and that's one of the things about him is he had that balance that Kamara has. And I wouldn't say to the extent Kamara's got elite, like almost never going to see again type of balance, but he has that balance, that type of constant speed, and I really like Miller, but haven't been able to see much of him.
Yeah, tough task, especially tough task. Now, going to this is sort of a different story from the Carolina Panthers because I was obviously looking when we faced the Panthers, what would their roster situation look like, which obviously is not so much due to bad wide receiver room or any of that stuff. But I looked at the roster. They are you a little shocked that they have not added more than three receivers? I mean, obviously you got Mason Tipton, Valdez Scantling, and Cedric Wilson Jr. And you got some guys on the practice squad, but you got also three tight ends in Dallin Hoker, Juwan Johnson, and Foster Moreau, who accompanied Derek Carr over in Las Vegas and Oakland. Are you a little surprised? Are they waiting for guys to come back, or are you just kind of just going with the personnel grouping only because of the injuries?
I'm 100% surprised. The only guy that you're really going to get back from injury is Bub Means, rookie. Which I'm excited to see him. But other than that, you don't have a lot of guys out there. I'm not sure what the game plan is with the wide receiver, but you're not getting Chris Olave back. Rashid Shaheed's not coming back. Olave's probably being shut down for the season because he had the two bad head injuries. And with a losing season, there's no reason to force him to come back. Valdez Scantling's been on one hell of a tear. I would say that. I mean, I believe it's 4 touchdowns in the last 3 games and near 300 yards. So he's definitely stepped up. I don't know what the game plan is there. I know the Saints want to run the ball. You got the perfect opportunity against the Giants this week to run the ball, and but they've actually cut players. A.T. Perry, a second-year player, really excited for him, and he was cut. So I'm not sure what it is with the personnel if they just don't like the guys they have in the room, or I mean, they must really like the guys that they currently have in the room to only run the 3, 4 wide receivers.
Yeah, definitely. So, moving to the offensive line, the guys who blocked for Derek Carr, one of our guys actually got to get a few questions in with him at the Senior Bowl. Left tackle Talise Fuaga, how has he progressed in his first year?
Oh man, I mean, if you want, I can make this whole show about Taliesin Fuanga. I loved Taliesin Fuanga coming out, scouted him, mocked him. I have a tweet coming out that actually I put out a few months before the draft, and I'm like, I would love to trade up because at that time I thought Taliesin Fuanga was going to go top 7 or so. I said I would love to trade up for Taliesin Fuanga. I really, really liked him, and I still do. He actually held Miles Garrett to no pressures. He's a beast in getting into the secondary and putting guys on their ass, man. I love Tyler Funga. He's developed well. Really could justify there having him at left tackle. The move to put him at left tackle when he played right tackle in college and putting Trevor Penning, who played left tackle his sophomore year at right tackle. I don't know what the reasoning was there, but the switch was perfect. He looks like he could be the long time left tackle.
And as for the right tackle, as you brought up Trevor Penning, I remember, people couldn't stop playing the highlights from his Senior Bowl when he was putting people into the ground and all this other stuff. But I know he obviously, for the first few years, he struggled when he came to the NFL with a couple of different things. How has he worked out at right tackle?
He struggled to start the year, so I mean, it didn't look good. Constantly needing to send help for him isn't ideal, right? You want a guy to be able to handle his one-on-ones. But man, he's progressed this year too. I think that's one of the most positives that you could get out of this season, if nothing else, is your tackles seem to be solid going forwards. Like I said, Penning had so many struggles coming in, and there was a lot of doubts, and he even struggled through the first 2 weeks, even though it was kind of hidden, or you would say masked. But he's developed nicely. He's handling his one-on-ones, and he is still putting guys into the ground.
Yeah, good to hear. Going to the defensive side of the ball, I was kind of shocked when I was looking at the defensive numbers, and not that it's like an overly super talented, defensive line, but there are still notable names. Is it personnel or is it a scheme issue for the Saints in terms of getting to the passer?
You've seen in the past couple weeks that they're getting to the passer more, so it may be a scheme thing. Dennis Allen, who Let me get it straight. Dennis Allen is a very good defensive coach. I don't want to put anything past it. He's not a head coach, but he is a very good defense coordinator. And but we were having struggling numbers getting to the quarterback with him here. With Joe Woods taking over, you've seen a little more of that, and you'd hopefully see that again this week against the Giants, where last season we've actually had 7 sacks. You're getting guys back. Tanoka Passingo is coming back. Brian Brzee has still developed really nicely, despite PFF actually has him graded pretty lowly. But he's developed pretty nicely into a pass rusher. He's got 6.5 sacks on the season. Cam Jordan's just getting old. I mean, it's going to eventually happen. Cam Jordan's getting old. Chase Young, he's getting the pressures, but he's not finishing. So I think it's more of finishing. This week you're going against Drew Lock, who can scramble. That's one of the Saints' biggest problems is getting a scrambling quarterback to the ground. Even through the first 2 weeks, you kind of saw a glimpse of it, but it was Bryce Young, so he wasn't making the throws. But Bryce Young was tearing the Saints and breaking tackles and throwing balls. And if he could have hit them, that game would have been a lot closer, to be honest.
Definitely. And in Hard Knocks, the Giants revealed that they wanted one of these guys, but he eventually slipped past and obviously went to the New Orleans Saints, one of the teams in front of them in the second round. And that player was Kool-Aid McKinstry. How has he performed in his rookie year?
I think you would give it, a regular rookie cornerback season. He has those glimpses, but there was already some rookie mistakes and miscommunications, which you would expect from a rookie, especially having to start him, which the Saints, I'm assuming, weren't planning on starting him this season. But you get rid of Marshawn Lattimore, and now you have Alante Taylor, who's you actually like playing in a slot, playing on the outside with Kool-Aid McKinstry on the other side of him. He's he's doing his thing. I would say its development is there. It looks good, but it's just not exactly where you want to be at.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Saints' pass defense, statistically, before we go into further game prep, is ranked one of the worst in football. Is that a result of the Lattimore trade, or is it something like you talked about where you have a mixture of Kool Aid's rookie year and Alante Taylor, who's usually a slot and box guy, he's moving to the outside?
One thing is safety uncertainty. Second year safety Jordan Howden and veteran Will Harris have kind of been fighting for that opposite of Tyrann Mathieu. You don't have anyone who's really taken control of that spot. So not in a good way, right? It's not like two guys who are really like fighting for it. These are guys that's like you're settling for what you got there. Will Harris has kind of stepped up as the veteran. You would expect that, and like you said, you do have two younger cornerbacks on the outside. I actually think the problem is stopping the run and play action, killing you from there. They let up a lot of big plays. You can't stop the run, and then you get hit with a deep play action. It just happened. I will say one of the things watching Lante Taylor is some wide receivers have just made crazy catches on him. Like he's plays perfect defense throughout, and you can't do anything like a perfect throw or whatever. His defense has been pretty good this season. I like Lante Taylor. I wouldn't put everything on him, but he is still developing on the outside. And like I said, he's usually a slot guy.
Definitely. So moving further into game prep for the Saints to win this game, who's the X factor on offense and who's the X factor for the Saints on defense?
Offensively, Alvin Kamara. I mean, you got two of the worst rushing defenses in the league right now. Alvin Kamara he's on a career rushing year. I think he's probably gonna be your guy that leads you to the win. Defensively, you know, I think Brian Brzee had a good game last year. He's filling that defensive tackle spot. I'm hoping he gets a couple sacks this season, but really plug up those holes because we have one of the worst rushing defenses and prevent Tyron Tracy from going crazy.
Yeah, definitely. And as far as the Giants, if you were planning against them, stuff like that, who's somebody you want to look for on offense and somebody you want to look out for on defense?
Well, with offensively, Tyron Tracy. I mean, he can flip a game at any point, 100 yard, 130 yard game. We've seen him do it. We have one of the worst rushing defenses. So I would just say bottle him up, keep him under that. Honestly, just keep him under 100. Keep him under that 100 yard mark and try to outrun you guys. And on defense, I would have to go. I'm drawing a blank right now. Is it Banks? I'm thinking Banks. Banks.
Well, Banks is out for the game.
Oh,
So
he is
guys,
okay.
you guys are gonna have if you could get the ball out, you're gonna have a little bit of a fun time on a secondary.
That's exactly what I was gonna lead to because I believe I saw your guys' injury report. I mean, you guys are maybe one of the only teams to rival the Saints I've seen this season. Believe last your final had 15 guys on it,
Yeah,
and more DBs showed up on Friday. So do that play action and try to take your deep shots again. MVS has, like I said, he's on a tear. Hopefully, continue his touchdown trend.
yeah. And as you were saying that 12 minutes ago, I just looked at my Twitter. Another Giants corner who usually starts on the opposite side is questionable, which is a very, very late addition. But we'll see, of course, on Sunday if the New Orleans Saints take advantage of that with Derek Carr and all. And then the final thing I'll ask you is where can people find you and what you do?
All right. Well, I appreciate you having me come on. I don't get too many opportunities to do this, but on Twitter, I'm Kyle Besson 504. I write for Canal Street Chronicles, like I said before. So if you'd like to check me out on there, it's canalstreetchronicles.com, and you can just click on my name, and all my articles are there. And I do want to say one thing before we do head this up.
Sure.
I think the Giants definitely have the pieces now. Malik Neighbors, love him. Tylen Tracy. You gotta, buff up that O line and find your quarterback of the future. But you guys have what I would say is the best setup for a rookie quarterback now. You got that promising young wide receiver, and you have a run game that has clearly seen success. Build up that O line, and probably not Shadur. I believe Shadur was called off
Yeah.
limits.
Yeah. I mean, I was saw a tweet like maybe 20 to 30 minutes ago that said uh Dion was at they were at an event, and I think it may have been Shadur's like award win, or he won an award or something like that. And Dion said, Antonio Pierce, you better draft the Sanders boys. So you kind of already know where that's heading. And so that would probably put Cam Ward in the Giants' hands, depending on how they like him. But I
Mhm,
absolutely agree. I think the Giants, as bad as they are and have been, I don't think they're that far away. But just adding pieces and stuff like that. But we're gonna wrap up this show here. Of course, I'd like to thank Kyle for coming on. Please check out his articles. Please check out his Twitter and all his stuff at Canal Street Chronicles. As for this show, like, comment, subscribe, turn on post notifications so you know when a live stream pops video drops. We'll be back on Tuesday with a recap and much more content coming out, Yankees and a lot of the other shit related. So appreciate you guys, and we will talk to you soon.